Let's be honest, video games are awesome, and some of the best games ever came from consoles dating back a few decades ago. What were these consoles? Today we'll be presenting our pick for the top 8 original retro consoles of all time, along with some of their very best games and all their nostalgic epic glory. Now this was an amazing video to work on, so if you enjoy it, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for future videos. Now, just a few guidelines. Our retro consoles will cover 1977 through 1999, not include any handhelds, portables, arcade cabinets, and only include original consoles with a primary purpose of gaming. Of course, these are our opinions and our opinions alone, but feel free to comment with any years below. There is a mild spoiler effect in alert, so heads up if you haven't seen the endings to some common games during the 16-bit era. Let's start. Number 8, the NeoGeo, or more specifically, the NeoGeo Advanced Entertainment System, or AES. Make no mistake, this was the Cadillac, maybe even the Rolls-Royce of retro consoles, as it could produce amazing graphics for the time, had a great initial catalog of games, and was built with technology such that it allowed games to be played at home much the same way you'd play them at the arcade or wherever you could find a NeoGeo MVS arcade cabinet, which was seemingly sparse at the time. In fact, trying to play NeoGeo games was a real challenge, as it was initially only rented by businesses that were interested and, more importantly, could afford it. The best games for the NeoGeo AES included arcade-style fighting games like the Samurai Showdown series, The Last Blade, Walk Walk 7, visually appealing and incredibly fun action shooters like the Metal Slug franchise, where it was so much fun just to see how much stuff you could blow up. Addicting side-scrolling shooters, where you piloted various ships with a seemingly endless supply of powerful blasters and missiles like Polestar and Blazing Star. Even as I was recording the footage for this, I had to seriously pry myself away from continuing playing Blazing Star, as it was honestly that much fun, but the awesome games did not stop there. Games like Shock Troopers Second Squad gave you a top-down perspective of what it would be like to be a real-life, butt-kicking special ops commando in a heat of battle. Aero Fighters 2 transported you inside the cockpit of an overpowered jet, capable of some seriously fun maneuverability and destruction. The NeoGeo had sports games like Baseball Stars 2, where the action and larger-than-life comical antics of the players were a certifiable home run with any gamer that was willing to step up to the plate and crush a fastball down the middle. The NeoGeo even had games for the action RPG fan like Magician Lord, where you traversed different fantasy lands and laid waste to evil enemy creatures. The NeoGeo was awesome, so why only number 8? Because it was $650. To put that into a Bart Simpson perspective, that's over 800 Butterfingers. So unless you were Richie Rich, or maybe friends with Richie Rich, you simply weren't playing it. This price tag would have shocked Kevin McAllister more than the Wet Bandits, and honestly, if given the choice between a NeoGeo and 800 Butterfingers when I was 12, I'd opt to swim in Butterfingers like Scrooge McDuck. Number 7. The Sega Master System. Maybe the coolest looking and most underappreciated console on this list. Developed to compete with, but seriously outperformed in sales by the Nintendo Entertainment System, this console was actually pretty remarkable in a number of different ways. First off, it introduced us to the Sonic the Hedgehog. Other fun and visually appealing franchise titles included Streets of Rage, which would end up being mine and my friend's favorite beat-em-up franchise of all time. Ninja Gaiden took us on a thrilling, fast-paced adventure through various enemy hideouts and introduced us early to its legendary difficulty. For serious. Before Billy and Jimmy Lee were worried about revenge or sacred stones, they were kicking butt and taking names on the Master System in fun co-op action. Remember R-Type? You may not have known this, but there was a version of it for the Master System, and while it wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, it was definitely fun to play. The Shinobi franchise made its epic console debut on the Master System. Just think, we wouldn't have had game masterpieces like The Revenge of Shinobi without this first installment. If you love playing games like the first Legend of Zelda, you probably also like playing Golden Axe Warrior, as it's strikingly similar in a lot of different ways, including the overworld map, dungeon design, find valuable items and weapons deep within dungeons, and of course, battling epic dungeon bosses to receive one of the 9 necessary key items to progress in the game, like this crystal. Better refill that life meter. Sega Master System was also the first console to start the epic Phantasy Star franchise. In this first installment of the series, we began a groundbreaking RPG adventure that was full of exploration in the towns, dungeons, mazes, and full of interactions of all kinds with NPCs. What is up, my Stormtrooper dude? Unfortunately, I don't think Jedi mind tricks work on you. Of course, battling monsters like in any classic RPG to level up was a pure adrenaline rush. Don't worry, Owlbear, we'll get you next time. Overall, the Sega Master System was technically more powerful than its arch rival when you compare its graphics and memory setup. It was actually similar to some 16-bit systems from a technical perspective. Did you know it also had some really cool accessories? Just check these out below. So why wasn't the Master System more successful, specifically in North America and Europe? Simply put, because it was battling the industrial champion NES, who had a stranglehold on the market at the time. Yes, believe it or not, this was every kid's dream room at the time, mullet included. While the Master System was entirely underappreciated at the time, the system that got its name from executives throwing random darts at a whiteboard will live long in our nostalgic hearts forever. Number 6. The Atari 2600. Even looking at an image of a heavy sixer brings a huge smile to my face. Now, you may be wondering why this console is ranked so high on our list, and it's because it historically brought arcade classics into our homes. Can you remember when you were first able to play Space Invaders from the comforts of your couch instead of the arcade? Or maybe Asteroids, which was just as easy to start playing as it was hard to master the controls? Ah, so addicting and so much fun. Missile Command was another classic fun Atari 2600 game that also hit its difficulty in simple, addicting gameplay. You really truly never want to stop playing this game. An undeniable fan favorite was Pitfall, where you tried to avoid oncoming obstacles, swing on vines, all while you kept running to advance the game. Fair warning, crocodiles do suck. Berserk was one of the first shooters I ever played, and it's honestly super fun. Even the deaths in the game look pretty cool. Joust was another arcade classic, now playable from the couch, which was a super fun and enjoyable game. It was also the inspiration for some future games like Mario Brothers and the Killer Queen games. If you liked fast-paced gaming and had the reflexes of a straight-up mongoose, then Warlords was a game you could have a lot of fun playing. You just gotta be quick with that joystick. And then you have my favorite Atari 2600 game of all time, Yar's Revenge. Once you learn how to play it, it will surely become one of your favorite go-to games on the system. Atari was founded by video game pioneers who had influenced the industry for decades. With the 2600, Atari quickly found itself atop the video game industry in the 1970s. The influence of the 2600 can still be observed in all forms of mainstream media today. Just check out Ready Player One, Stranger Things, the Atari's band, the new Jumanji film, and even music from CeeLo Green. She's an Xbox and I'm more Atari. I feel ya, man. Though Atari and the 2600 was a runaway success in the late 70s, the early 80s told a much different story. As this chart by the Visual Capitalist shows, there was the North American video game crash of 1983, which was driven by poor quality games like Pac-Man and the E.T. game. Now, the first thing you'll notice when you play E.T. the game is the apparent lack of congruent story, anything resembling the plot of the movie, and holes. Yes, lots and lots of holes. You better get used to these bad boys as you're going to spend a lot of time in them. Now, if only the extra copies of this game had remained in their holes buried forever in that desert. But on the positive side here, this is nowhere near the worst game we've ever played, so please stop calling it that. For better or for worse, the Atari 2600 was undoubtedly one of the most influential consoles of all time. I will always remember it for bringing the arcade into our homes. Number 5. The Nintendo 64. What games come to mind when you see this fantastic console? I know I've got a few. Super Mario 64 really exemplified the new 3D exploration and platforming capabilities of the Nintendo 64. Everything from collecting coins, to swimming, to even eventually defeating Bowser was a whole new experience for gamers. Banjo-Kazooie was a fun and interesting game that really doubled down on utilizing teamwork in the 3D platforming capabilities of the system. Cruisin' USA was an exciting racing game where striving for first place was as fun as those high-speed crashes. First place all the way to the finish line. Speaking of racing games, Mario Kart 64 was a welcome addition and an amazing franchise that continues to add games today. Race for individual glory or play battle mode if you really want a challenge. Who doesn't immediately think of the start of some of the most epic gaming nights ever when they see the intro to the GoldenEye game? If you played the individual missions, you were transported into the world of James Bond, where you're able to shoot bad guys with a pistol over and over again to your heart's content until they dead. Or you could use the long-range sniper gun to surprise your enemies from afar. And finally, multiplayer mode where you could surprise your friends with a rocket launcher to the face. Friendship rules. We simply cannot talk about the Nintendo 64 without mentioning one of the greatest games of all time, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Most gamers and critics alike can agree on its universal acclaim. In a wonderful new 3D world, you are able to explore it openly, adventure on a new quest to collect items, weapons, hearts, and conquer thrilling dungeons with potential danger or treasure around each corner, seek new allies, and eventually face off with the one and only great king of evil himself, Ganondorf. Beating this game was a truly one-of-a-kind experience and one to be celebrated for years to come. The Nintendo 64 also had awesome sports games like FIFA 99, where you truly felt proud for finally hitting that back of the net. Goal! My absolute favorite sports game on this console was actually a pretty big surprise to me at the time. It was Mario Tennis, believe it or not. If you've ever wondered what it's like for Wario to really wind up and hit an overhead smash of Mario, this is definitely the game for you. Game, set, Wario. The multiplayer fun continued with games like Mario Party and its super fun mini games. Come on Luigi, let's go! Diddy Kong Racing provided in some ways an even more fun experience than Mario Kart, whether you were racing against a computer or your friends. First place all day, come on Diddy. And of course, one of the best feelings you can possibly experience from a game is the first time you ever sent an opponent flying across and off the screen in Super Smash Bros. Nintendo 64 eventually captured the hearts of gamers everywhere, even gamers like me who didn't like it at first, eventually ending up even in my wedding vows. Nintendo 64 will never forget your awesome multiplayer and 3D games. Number 4. The Sony PlayStation, a truly innovative console with one of the greatest controllers in the industry. It was truly a revolutionary console with its pioneering technology, high critical acclaim, and of course the many innovative franchise staple games we still love today. I will honestly never forget the first time I ever played Resident Evil 2 for probably the rest of my life. The game utterly defined the horror survival genre of video games, even in its most recent remake today. I've never had so much fun being scared for my digital life. On a more upbeat and living note, the PlayStation introduced gamers to the wonders of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, where everyone could fulfill their middle school dreams of becoming a professional skateboarder, completing insane tricks, or listen to one of the best gaming soundtracks ever. Seriously, cue up the Goldfinger and I'll grab my board, or maybe just stay inside and play more Tony Hawk. The PlayStation introduced many long-standing franchises which are still mostly popular today. Medal of Honor was one of those initial franchise games where it felt so good to take down enemy bad guys. Twisted Metal was another thrilling game where you blew up vehicles and tried to avoid that evil clown ice cream truck. Like Tony Hawk, it also had one of the most amazing soundtracks. Alright, we cannot talk about the PlayStation without mentioning Final Fantasy VII. I loved this game so much when it came out that I recently started streaming it on Fridays many years later. I was quickly reminded of why it is so epic, one of the reasons being the format of the boss fights, where you get to use all sorts of attacks and strategies to emerge victorious, all while kicking Shinra's butt and advancing the engaging storyline. You also got to add valuable and ultra-powerful allies to your team, like Vincent. As you progress, you uncover a larger, much more sinister evil in the shape of an absolutely epic end boss. Maybe you've heard of him. Sephiroth, so evil right now. Sephiroth. This scene still brings me chills today. But don't worry, there's plenty of comic stress relief from the character dialogue and of course the minigames, like this snowboard game that was seriously 10 minutes after a certain member of your party permanently dies. Rest in power, Flower Girl. And of course, using the different summon materials against epic bosses was a great way to keep the battles fresh. Take that weapon, you wish you were as cool as Godzilla. The PlayStation will forever be known as an innovative console that started many gamers' favorite franchises and even eventually led to the greatest selling console of all time, the PlayStation 2. As this Xenogears ad so eloquently puts it, the PlayStation and its games will always stand tall and shake the heavens. Alright, before we get into our top 3, we have to give a special shout out to some honorable mentions. As you can imagine, selecting only the top 8 original retro consoles was no easy task, and all of these consoles truly deserve a spot in retro gaming history forever. Also, for those that have made it this far in the video, you freaking rock, and we have a great top 3 lined up for you. These aren't just some of the best retro consoles, but really some of the best overall consoles ever. Number 3, the NES. The Nintendo Entertainment System, the Nintendo that your parents called every single other console you've ever owned. The Nintendo Entertainment System wasn't just one of the greatest consoles of all time, it also represented a tremendous resurgence in the video game console market, as evidenced by this insightful graph from Bloomberg Businessweek. From 86 to 89, the market surged. The console sold like crazy, and the game aisles at Toys R Us were legendary. Some of the most successful franchises in gaming history, like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, got their start on the NES. I don't think I can play this game without being transported back to the 80s, where my brother and I played this game for a year straight until we finally beat it. Castlevania also got its initial start on this console, and spawned so many sequels, it's a legitimate household name in many gaming communities. Mega Man introduced gamers to amazing platforming and amazing difficulty all in one, and oh my goodness, that soundtrack. NES was proven to be the ultimate video game console for consumers around the world. Even the intros to games like Batman were revolutionary pieces of digital art with awesome soundtracks to match. Contra was one of my absolute favorite games, and kudos to anyone who can somehow make it past this screen without entering the famous Konami code for extra lives. What was it again? Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA start? Yes, I now see the mouse point, thank you. Bubble Bobble proved you didn't need guns to have a good gaming experience. In fact, all you needed was 2 adorable dinosaurs, bubbles, and a healthy imagination. This game was an absolute blast to play. NES was firmly cemented into the pop culture of every single media channel there was. And the soundtracks were absolutely fantastic. I could honestly listen to DuckTales, aka the world's best animated theme song, all day long. Shout out to Hall & Notes, baby. The NES also started many gamers' massive addiction, myself included, for RPGs, or more specifically, JRPGs like Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest for my Japanese friends, and the Final Fantasy series. Love these games so much. Let's go get that Dragon Lord. And probably the most legendary boxing game of all time, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out pitted our hero Lil Mac against ridiculously oversized boxing opponents, some which were pretty easy, some which had hilarious ways to beat him like King Hippo here, and of course eventually against Iron Mike himself, who was an absolute beast of an end boss. My biggest props to you if you've ever beat him, because I sure haven't, but maybe one day I will. To cap it off, I have to highlight my favorite NES game of all time, Double Dragon 2 The Revenge, which was an epic side-scrolling beat-em-up slash platformer that had a banging soundtrack, awesome graphics, and comically overpowered super moves to combat hyper-muscular bosses. Still grinding for that sub 15, let's go. The NES will forever be remembered by gamers and parents alike. Number 2. The Sega Genesis. So hard to put this at number 2 as a Sega kid, but I had to be objective. Sega Genesis blasted onto the scene with a certifiable sonic boom. We saw a much improved in pretty much every possible way from the Master System's Sonic the Hedgehog game that allowed us all to move faster and jump higher while rocking out to an amazing soundtrack. An added bonus was that each sequel seemed to get better, at least on the Genesis. Toe Jam and Earl was an amazing comical adventure about 2 ultra-hip aliens who were both somehow incredibly onbeat and offbeat at the exact same time. Echo the Dolphin was kind of a crazy surprise of how fun it was to explore the colorful underwater world, even if you had no idea how to progress at certain points in the game. With the success of the Genesis, an epic console wars was brewing. Make sure to read the book. Games like Streets of Rage 2, my favorite beat-em-up of all time, proved to really connect like an Axel uppercut with fans of the genre. Sega Genesis exclusive games like Street Fighter II Special Championship Edition allow gamers to deliver massive blows to their opponents like Ryu's spin kick and Hadouken, and my personal favorite, use Chun-Li's lethal kick combos to finish opponents. She was seriously a cheat code in this game, hands down. Sega's brilliant marketing and games pull it to even market share with Nintendo at one point. Unique classics like Altered Beast cross different genres of games in a fun and innovative way. Golden Axe was the fantasy beat-em up we never knew we needed until my main man dropped those lightning bolts on him. Games like Revenge of Shinobi were a highlight reel in the making, and my personal favorite of the series, Bang Bang Bang, Do Those Flames. Bang Bang Bang, Do Those Flames. Genesis put out such an epic catalog of games, it was no wonder it seriously rivaled Nintendo. Even games that maybe fall underneath the Sega Genesis radar a bit, like Vectorman, were actually brilliant platformers that were an absolute blast to play. I mean, just check them out here. Comix Zone is my easy pick for the most visually appealing 16-bit game, where it pulls you right in the middle of a comic book dilemma where you're forced to use devastating combos to fight your way out. It also lets you pick your own adventure to some degree, so I think that's pretty cool. Add in explosives and boom, awesome game. It's pretty difficult though, so beware. Rocket Knight Adventures was another Sega Genesis game where if you knew, then you knew. Also, if you knew how awesome it was, you would know to play it every single day because it was very, very fun. Contra Hard Corps was a Sega Genesis installment of the amazing franchise game. Here all the gun blasts, power-ups, and bad guys really come to life with enhanced graphics. Don't worry, it was just as hard as the original, and if you beat it, mad props to you. Speaking of run and gun games, we have to talk about Gunstar Heroes. This isn't simply the best run and gun game on the Genesis, it might actually be the best overall game on the console, no joke. Blown up stuff is way too much fun in this game, blast on my friends. The Genesis was Sega's best ever console. Unfortunately, the company would be limited by its own lack of technical innovation and an allegation that its games somehow induced violence, which still has never been proven. So I'm going to keep on playing Mortal Kombat with the blood coat on. Alright, we finally made it to the top spot, the best of the best original retro console. Our pick for the #1 original retro console is none other than the SNES. The Super Nintendo is #1 for a lot of different compelling reasons. Let's start with a Super Nintendo masterpiece, Super Mario World, where you were introduced to quite possibly gaming's most awesome sidekick. Sorry Luigi and little brothers everywhere, I can only say that because I'm a fellow little brother myself, but Yoshi is pretty rad. He eats stuff, shoots fireballs, and has multiple different versions with unique capabilities. He also doesn't mind it when you sacrifice him to progress. What a friend. I truly believe the world would be a better place if everyone had a sidekick like Yoshi in their lives. The only bad part is you can't use him to beat Bowser. Once you make it through his castle and get to the now famous Bowser battle, get ready to pull out all the stops to save the princess. Beating this game is totally worth it because you were rewarded with some of the best end credits ever to grace a TV screen. Truly believe that. Another 16-bit masterpiece is The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, which is my favorite in the series. In this amazing game, which I completed a few months back, you traverse the best overall dungeons. You make your way through fun puzzles and battle epic dungeon bosses to progress the game and increase your overall life meter, all while enjoying some of the best music the entire Zelda franchise has to offer, at least in my humble opinion. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past has some of retro gaming's most epic moments, like when you get the Master Sword, or when you get to face off against the true end boss Ganon. And finally, when you get to raise that golden Triforce above Link's head. Congrats! As much as I liked the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo was the ultimate king of the 16-bit jungle. Super Metroid, my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time, was another instant classic. It had amazing moves you needed to master like wall jumping. Thank you my weird animal friends, you rock. Moves like the Shine Spark, which was incredibly useful to progress in the game, explore new areas, and even get some items early. What is up, Energy Tank early? Super Metroid truly had it all, including fierce battles with familiar faces like Ridley, deep within his scary, atmospheric lair. It had an unforgettable endgame escape sequence that truly put you to the test, kept you on your toes, and made you feel like you were barely gonna make it. And finally, Super Metroid had one incredible, daring escape right before the latest planet in the Metroid galaxy has blown up. What an incredible, awesome ride this game was. Just remember, if you're gonna play this game, always make sure you're willing to save those animals. There were so many awesome games in the Super Nintendo, it was almost kind of mind-blowing. Initial franchise titles like Super Mario Kart introduced gamers to the most popular turn in gaming, the Power Slide. Here's Yoshi doing his best Tokyo Drift impression on his way to a first place finish. Way to drive, my man. You rock, Yoshi. Donkey Kong Country introduced us to the extended Kong family in a super exciting way. Finally, Donkey Kong gets to become the hero, not the villain Mario always portrays him to be. Just watch out for any false endings in this game. I fell for the first and almost the second time. Another franchise first was Star Fox, where the animal pilots proved to be way more fun and lighthearted than the other more serious fighter jet games at the time. Also made for a baller Super Smash Bros. Level. And we can't talk about the Super Nintendo without its amazing catalog of role-playing games. Games like Chrono Trigger truly led the RPG march. Games like Final Fantasy III continued that march and really made us feel their amazing storylines. Action RPGs like Secret of Mana provided a beautiful backdrop for a fun co-op play with your gaming best friends. Just don't curse out that AI too much now. Games like Lufia 2 surprised many gamers with a great balance of engaging story and visual detail, especially during the boss fights that you might not have expected during this time in gaming history. Games in the Breath of Fire series were some of the most stunning RPGs from a visual standpoint and creative from a character development perspective as well. You really needed a good team in order to progress in the story. Super Mario RPG finally let gamers better understand what teamwork between Mario, Peach, and Bowser, along with other characters, might look like as they join together to battle a greater evil force. Spoiler alert, it's kind of awesome. And finally, just to prove that there was absolutely a Super Nintendo RPG for seriously every possible subgenre of gaming, we have the unmistakable Earthbound, which traded medieval kingdoms for suburban neighborhoods, traded mythical warriors for middle school age kids, which traded beastly enemies for oddly named and even more oddly attacking foes, which traded legendary composed soundtracks for a mix of localized parody covers of American pop songs, but never ever lacked any level of imagination or creativity. An absolute must play, even though I clearly hated it when I first started it. The Super Nintendo fandom worldwide was just as epic then as it is now, as places like Super Nintendo World sprout up to allow people to rejoice in their favorite console. Alright, those are our picks for the top 8 original retro consoles of all time. We want to make sure to give you a huge thank you for watching in the best way we know how, with a full assortment of our favorite sidekicks, Yoshi, from maybe the best ending credits to ever grace a TV screen. Did you agree with our picks? What would you have included? Comment below with your opinions, and as always, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for future videos. And always remember, damn, it feels good to be a gamer.